Pennsylvania system, inmates did handicraft work in their cells. Urban prisoners labored in congregate workshop, offsetting imprisonment and caused by fulfilling private industry contracts. A hidden passageway with small opening surround the work areas allowed inspector to visit to surreptitiously monitor the inmates. Auburn briefly 1821 to 25 implemented the three-level classification system. So the prisoners in the Auburn system, or the inmates did handicraft work in their cells, and the Auburn prisoners labored in congregate workshop. So inside their in their prison, they have livelihood activities. They have handicraft, so that they will not be bored, and they have they have also they also give good they have also give good and effective products to everyone. Subsequently, all male inmates work in the concrete shops by day, returning to individual cells at night. So, females first committed the Auburn in 1825, were relegated to an attic and exclude the regular work and exercise to ensure that inmates did not corrupt one another. British successor Elma Lynch enforced a squashy military routine of absolute silence, strict discipline, and economic productivity labor. So the males work congregate shop by day, and so by then the first female committed the Auburn in 1825, where the male or the woman will execute and exercise the same way to the male. So, and one of the British successor, Elma Lynch, enforced a squashy military routine of absolute silence and strictly discipline and economic productivity. So he is probably a good model to the prisoner and to the wardens. In response to bells, had 7 inmates dressed in striped clothing silently march and lockstep information into from cell for meals and work assigned. Literally were banned, and site chaplains were the only occasional visitors. Flogging and other forms of corporal punishment enforced. The rules such as regimentation withdraw necessary restraint in rebellious nature of the offenders. So the prisoners or the inmates will dress striped clothing and silently march in the lockstep when they go to the meals and their assignments. So eventually, overcrowding made the silence made the silence system unenforceable. The urban system of discipline deteriorated into corrupt and lax harsh punishment. After the Civil War, the spirit of reform where the contract labor was no longer profitable despite the dominance of idea system. Urban remanded the models of for, near, for nearly a century primarily because it had been expensive to construct and maintain. So, as what I have mentioned earlier, they marched to us. They silently march, but um, silently, but overcrowding is made the silent system unforceable. So it cannot be because urban system have a lot rate, lot of prison and a high rate of prisoners. So unlike Auburn or system, Pennsylvania Eastern Penitentiary in 1829 was intended to keep convicts separate even as they work in order to prevent any earthly contamination or destruction that might implement their repentance. Hence, the term penitentiary located on the Cherry Hill on the outskirts of Philadelphia Eastern represented one of the most imposing and expensive architectural achievements in the United States to date and contain innovations such as running water and flush toilets into the cell. So their cells and their prisoners and their prison system and their cell is being upgraded, and it was good for the prisoners and their system. Although View, Viewmont and Tocqueville found it incontestable that this perfect isolation security the prisoner from all vital contamination, they favor the more cost-effective urban plan which seemed more like to enable state to profit from convict labor. So, Beaumont and Tocqueville found it very perfect isolation for very perfect isolation security for the inmates or prisoners. So let's we talk about their prison life. During the 19th century, prisoners had no rights or no opportunity to live semi-comfortable. The urban system established several characteristics that were unique to the world of disciplinary condition. Silence was the biggest factor among rows of prisoners. John Degree, a deputy warden of urban prison, demanded that prisoners be completely silenced to take away the prison the prisoners the prison's sense of self. When this sense of self was taken away, many convicts obey the warden wishes. So their prison life is they have no they have um they have less democracy on their self. Um, they live semi comfortably and they have no rights or anything, or they have low self establishment. to the prisoner. And silence is the best and the best rules and the biggest rule to this prison system. Lockstep and clothing. So Elam Lynch, in association with John D. Gray, developed the revolutionary system of transporting convicts with the prison. The prisoner marched in unison and locked their arms into the convict in front of them. The prisoners had to look to one side and they were allowed to look at guards. They were not allowed to look at guards or other inmates. The clothing at the prison was grayish material with horizon stripe. So their clothes is stripe and horizon, uh, a grayish material with horizon stripe, and they march um, they march in unison and lock their arms to the convict in front of them. So they have they have very very low in terms of freedom because they are being locked. So punishment. In 1921, a new principal keeper, Elam Lynch, was appointed to run the prison. He believed in disciplinary power of lash and used flogging to punish even minor infractions. In 1839, a prisoner died and neglect the overflogging. The Committee of Auburn and other staff members of the Auburn Theological Seminary petitioned to bring the issue of punishment to state government. The law stated the 6 vows of Nate and the cut o 6-stranded whip was the most punishment that could be assigned for anyone offense. So their punishment is very hard and difficult for the prisoner because it is very unwanted for a person. They are very strict to everyone. So in 1846, another meeting was congregate to abolish the use of whips. Flagellation could only be the riots of severe cases. When whipping was prohibited, guards and keepers sought the new way to punish the disorderly. The shower bath consisted barrel about 4.5 feet with the discharge tube of the bottom. The prisoner was stripped naked, bound hand and the foot with wooden collar around the neck to prevent removing the head. The barrel with the inmate inside was placed directly under an outlet pipe where water, sometimes ice, would pour down. Another punishment was the yoke. The yoke used iron bars around the neck, arms to the prison. So literally, the yoke is being put by the neck, and they in my previous discussion, in the previous slides, we talked uh, about the meeting, or the the togetherness of the official system, and the meeting was congregated to abolish the use of whips, because whips is very very unhealthy and very harsh to the prisoners. So they tend to use another way, or another system in handling the prisoners. So women and the prison. So in the early days of the prison, women inmates were held in the windowless, attic attacks, and high security prison. They shared a single room and slept in the same area, where they worked primarily at picking walls, kneeling, and spooling. In 1838, all women prisoners were transferred to the new female wings at Sing Sing. In 1990, in 1892, Auburn Prison. In 1892, the woman returned to a new building at the Auburn Prison. The Auburn the Auburn Women's Prison remained in operation until 1933, when a new maximum security wing, the female inmates, opened at Bedford Hill. So at the early days of the prison, women are slept in the area where they are doing their activities and their work and at, at it was being transferred in the Sing Sing, and was also returned to Auburn Prison in 1933. So Pennsylvania system. Pennsylvania system penal method based on the principle that solitary confinement foster penitence and encourages reformation. The idea was advocated by Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons, whose most active members were Quakers. In 1829, the Eastern State Penitentiary on Cherry Hill in Philadelphia applied the so-called separate philosophy. Prisoners were kept into solitary confinement in cells 16 feet high, nearby 12 feet long, and 7.5 meters wide, or 4.9 by 37 by 23.7 by 2.3 meter. So an exercise yard completely enclosed to prevent contact among prisoners was attached to each cell's prisoners, so no one except the institutors and occasional visitors. Solitary confinement, however, was soon modified and include the performance of work such as shoemaking or weaving. The Pennsylvania system spread until it predominated in European prison. Critics in the United States argue that it was too costly and had deleterious effect on the minds of the prisoners. The Pennsylvania system was surprised in the United States at the Auburn system. So their prison is completely enclosed to prevent contact among prisoners. and was attached to each cell. So the prisoners, they cannot see each other, except for the officers and the visitors, the occasional visitors. And they they tend to, and um, they implement livelihood activities for the prisoners, like shoemaking, weaving, and many others. Prison Prisons history: the Pennsylvania system. Unlike Auburn, Pennsylvania, Eastern Penitentiary was intended to keep convicts separate in ever working to prevent in any contamination on contract that might be repentance. Hence, the term penitentiary located on Cherry Hill on the outskirts of Philadelphia Eastern represented on the most imposing and expensive architecture achievement of the United States to date, and they flush toilets in the cells. Although Bonant and Tokyo found inconceivable that perfect isolation secure prisoner from the fatal contamination, favored over were planned were which seemed more likely enable state to profit from convict labor. Francis Labor, the Prussian immigrant scholar who translated Beaumont and Tucker's work into English, held American new penitentiary system was monuments of charitable disposition of the honest member of society toward their fallen and unfortunate Britain. Um, Lieber coined the term penology to describe that branch of criminal science which occupy itself with the punishment of criminal, not with the definition of crime subject of accountability of the proving to the crime which belongs to criminal law and penal process. So next, another prominent foreign visitor to Eastern Penitentiary was much more critical on the uncompromising solitary confinement approach after tutoring the institution in 1819 1842. Charles Dickens. So he is the foreign visitor of Eastern Penitentiary. The English novelist conclude the American notes in 1842 that the Pennsylvania plan was cruel and wrong, saying he found this slow and daily tempering with the masteries of brain to the immeasurable worse than the torture of the body. So he says that he concluded that the plan of Pennsylvania is cruel and wrong. So early punishment. His fellow colonists could tell William live life of crime. His ears were cracked and lash marks scared by his back and right palm with a cherby for burglary on the left R for rogue. If his crimes failed any and to left any higher that the last best of the colony, leaders that for his reform, his great grandson Edward also led a life of crime in Pennsylvania colony. but no scars or bands betray his deeds. His punishment, sitting in a cell alone to reflect on its deeds in hope that he'll be a reformed man with the dramatic change punishment approach